have a Little Shop of Horrors hot take that I don't think anyone else has, or at the very least I have not seen anyone else express it. And, you know, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a millennial in possession of a spicy hot take simply must make a video essay about it, right? Don't answer that. I'm doing it either way. Now, if you've never seen Little Shop of Horrors, first off, what the hell is wrong with you? Get thee immediately to literally any high school theater or community theater or regional theater in this great nation of ours. But for the woefully ignorant, Little Shop of Horrors is a 1982 hit musical written by Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, otherwise known as the two songwriting legends? Yeah, I'm gonna say legends, responsible for the Disney Renaissance. It follows the story of Seymour Krelborn, a young orphan living on Skid Row in New York City in the 1960s. Seymour comes into possession of a strange and unusual plant, which he names Audrey 2, after his co-worker and crush Audrey. The plant's bizarre appearance attracts lots of attention and revenue for the flower shop in which Audrey and Seymour work, and even nets Seymour a fair bit of fame and fortune. But unfortunately, the only substance that will keep the plant alive is human flesh. And also it talks. And sings. Everybody sings. It's a musical. Little Shop was adapted into a musical film in 1986, and it's amazing? I love this movie more than I can say. I adore everything about it. It captures the frenetic tone of the stage musical in a way that few other such adaptations have, while simultaneously making enough cinematically minded changes that it still works as a movie. But of course, the crowning achievement of this film adaptation has to be the Audrey 2 puppet. Because this was made in the halcyon days before CGI, the puppetry and practical effects on display here are kind of a landmark achievement in the history of cinema that's unlikely to ever be replicated. Not to mention that it's just incredibly fun to watch. Because the puppet is so intricate and complex, it's able to create expressions and body language that no Audrey 2 puppet has ever come close to replicating on stage. And the fact that it's in the room with the actors and in a very real sense has chemistry with them means that the human performances are enhanced into the fucking stratosphere. Ellen Greene and Rick Moranis as our Audrey and Seymour is already just pitch perfect casting, and watching them interact with Audrey 2 is nothing less than joyful. But none of that is my hot take. In order to get to my hot take, we need to discuss one of the biggest adaptational changes from stage to screen, namely, the ending. Part 1, Killer Plants vs. Horny Fur Demons. Obligatory spoiler warning goes here. I'm about to spoil the entire musical and the entire movie. Great, got it, good, okay, we're golden. So yeah, at the end of the stage musical, all our main characters fucking die! They get eaten by Audrey 2, and then the whole world gets eaten by Audrey 2, which we learn by getting sung at about it. Oh no, not Cleveland. Don't do it.
But whatever they offer you,
you heard it here first, folks. Kill your potted plants right now when you have the chance. By forgetting to water them, you're saving America. Now, originally, this was also supposed to be the ending of the movie, albeit shown rather than sung. Director Frank Oz famously shot an incredibly expensive ending sequence in which we see the plants invading New York City, destroying famous landmarks, killing lots of people, and overpowering the military. Now, this makes sense as an adaptational change, right? In a musical, we can learn about these events through song because they're understandably too grandiose to show on stage. But in a movie, audiences simply expect a more complete visual experience than that. This is all fascinating stuff, and it all has to do with the suspension of disbelief in theater versus film, and it's also the reason why the 2019 Cats movie is such a horrific trash fire. Like, you go and see Cats on Broadway, and you think, okay, I mean, this was a waste of $200, but it's a bunch of people dressed as cats. I get it. Whereas you go and see Cats 2019 and you're like, this is a film, so I expect to see actual literal creatures on the screen, but boy oh boy, do these literal creatures make me want to walk into the ocean. I bring up this example not to torment you with that traumatic memory, although I am very sorry. But because a similar yet distinct turn of events actually happened with the test audiences for Little Shop of Horrors back in the 80s. In 2012, Frank Oz gave an interview about the film in Entertainment Weekly where he said the following: "For every musical number, there was applause. They loved it. Until we killed our two leads. And then the theater became a refrigerator, an icebox. It was awful. You have to have a 55% recommend to really be released, and we got a 13. But, you know, it's a lesson learned, because when the plant kills Seymour and Audrey on stage, the actors afterwards take a bow. The difference is, in movies, they don't take a bow. They're gone, and so the audience lost the people they loved, as opposed to the theater audience, where they knew the two people who played Seymour and Audrey were still alive. And so they changed it. In the theatrical cut, Seymour finds a way to electrocute Audrey 2 at the last second that is not set up and comes completely out of nowhere, and he and Audrey 1 get a quick happy ending where they move to the suburbs and live happily ever after, ? Now, I think that Frank's statement here is an accurate assessment of the two different types of suspension of disbelief present in theater versus film. However, I disagree when it comes to this particular movie. There was absolutely a way to make the dark ending work here, and it's only because of a few other smaller, less noticeable adaptational changes that it didn't. But in order to get into that, we're gonna have to dive into some themes. Part 2, can you feel the Sturm and Drang in the air, Mr. Krabs? Okay, so one of the reasons that Little Shop of Horrors is so effective is because it is a modern adaptation of the Faust myth. What's the Faust myth? Great question. The Faust myth is a classical German legend about a dude named Faust who makes a deal with the devil and trades away his soul for something he desires. The thing that he desires is often different between different iterations of the myth, but usually it's something along the lines of unlimited knowledge, worldly pleasures, looking young and hot again, etc. The story nearly always ends with Faust overindulging, losing himself, and getting literally dragged to hell. The two most famous iterations are two plays that you might have heard of: The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus by Shakespeare's contemporary Christopher Marlowe, and the simply named Faust, Parts 1 and 2, by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Of particular note is that Goethe's Faust was part of a literary movement in Germany in the late 18th century known as Sturm und Drang. Hence, the Faust myth is one of the most widely adapted stories of all time. It's almost de rigueur for artists throughout at least Western history to come up with their own version of the myth and put their own spin on it. As a result, each Faust is often a reflection of the artist's values, and therefore of the artist's era. And this goes just as much, if not more, for the sneaky Faust adaptation. In the same way that Mephistopheles usually tempts Faust away from heavenly virtue by offering him short-term pleasures, Seymour is beguiled by Audrey 2 into destroying everything he cares about, that is, human life in general and Audrey in specific, in pursuit of fame, respect, wealth, and a feeling of belonging. In this way, Little Shop of Horrors adapts the Faust myth in the service of examining a particularly 20th century and American concern, namely, the American dream. The American dream is one of those concepts that is at once incredibly specific and frustratingly vague. 'Cause, like, I say it, and you know exactly what to picture, right? Big wooden house in the burbs, lawnmowers, heteronormativity, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. But also, the American dream is, you know, prosperity, and the promise of a better future, and whatever the hell Hamilton is about.
Immigrants, we get the job done.
There's literally an entire season of Dimension 20 that demonstrates at length how the American dream is different for everyone and can be whatever you want depending on the situation. Like the word problematic, it has been bestowed with so much meaning that it basically has no meaning. But let's examine what Little Shop has to say about the American dream, and specifically how it filters it through gender, because boy oh boy, is this show agendered. So let's look at our male protagonist. Seymour's American dream is one of fame, status, and if I may be so blunt, dat pussy. But if we consider Seymour's love interests, what Audrey wants most of all is a stable marriage with a nice guy, a nice house, a nice yard, and nice appliances. The more stereotypical American dream that I mentioned before.
A washer and a dryer and an ironing machine and a tract house that we share somewhere that's green.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just have to sideline us for a moment to acknowledge two things. Number one, Menken and Ashman are absolute goddamn geniuses, and this song slaps so fucking hard. Like, we all know it's essentially the proto part of your world.
Out of the sea, Skid Row, a dream could be. We'll go part of that world.
But, like, there's a reason these guys are the goddamn masters of I want songs. Anyway, it's just, I love this song so much. And number two, we just gotta briefly talk about Ellen Green's singing voice.
There's plastic on the furniture to keep it neat and clean.
It's so good and so weird. I cannot think of another singer's voice that sounds quite like it. In Little Shop, Seymour and Audrey are both living out very gendered fantasies. Seymour wants the vision of success that our culture tells him he should want as a man, and Audrey wants the life our culture tells her she should want as a woman. In the movie, she literally spends her fantasy sequence leafing through a women's magazine. The trouble is that Seymour is so goddamn insecure that he is convinced to pursue this vision of masculinity at any cost. And Audrey's problem is, well, her American dream is contingent economically and socially on her being in a relationship with a man. At any cost. To the point that she willingly stays with an abuser for the entire first act and spends the entirety of the second act excusing all of Seymour's many red flags, leading to her death. She even has a reprise of Somewhere That's Green as she's dying, where she expresses her desire to sublimate her own identity to service Seymour's dream.
When I die, which should be very shortly, give me to the plant so it can live to bring you all the wonderful things you deserve.
Truly wild, but also exactly what society expects women to do in this era. In this way, Seymour and Audrey's central desires are parallel, something made explicit in the musical's table-setting number, Skid Row.
I don't know what to get out of Skid, but a hell of a lot to get out of Skid. People tell me there's no way out of Skid Row.
But the tragedy here is that in the end, neither Seymour nor Audrey gets out of Skid Row. In the stage show, at least, they both die there, literally swallowed by the manifestation of their unattainable dreams. And this is the primary philosophical observation that Little Shop brings to the table, to consider the violence and horror that is needed to sustain the American dream in both its male and female iterations. And that violence is poverty. That is the ultimate lie of the suburb, that everything is fine because everything is fine right here. But under capitalism, you don't get this picturesque perfection without the exploitation of an underclass. And how do you keep that underclass in check? You sell them the suburb, and you keep it just out of their reach. So those are the themes. Now how does the movie fuck 'em all right up? Part 3, why this is hell, nor am I out of it. Okay, so I'm gonna say some uncharitable things about the movie in this section. Let me just reiterate, one of my favorite movies of all time. But in the stage musical, there are 5 distinct turning points when, like Faust being tempted away from heaven towards hell, Seymour takes an incremental step away from his sense of morality and towards the American dream. Point number 1 is in the song Mushnick and Son. Seymour's boss, Mr. Mushnick, is scared that Seymour, and more importantly Seymour's profitable new plant, will leave him, and so he decides to adopt him as his son. This rewards Seymour's search for a feeling of belonging, and Seymour directly attributes it to the plant's arrival.
And someday when you're 83, I'll let you come move in with me.
You swear?
Promise.
What a son!
Thanks to you, sweet Petunia. Mushnik's taken. Aw, Junior.
Point number 2 is in the very next musical number, Feed Me / Get It. Audrey 2 spends this entire song whittling away at Seymour's insecurities and desires, trying to convince him to kill people. Seymour understandably proves very hesitant, and the thing that changes his mind is when Audrey arrives with her abusive boyfriend Orrin, and Orrin hits her. It's important to note that this point, unlike point number 1, is a conscious decision on Seymour's part. Point number 3 occurs in the song It's Just the Gas. Seymour has brought a gun to the dentist's office where Orrin works, but he cannot work up the chutzpah to shoot him. However, when Orrin's gas mask malfunctions, Seymour is presented with a choice.
What we have here is an ethical dilemma. Let's say help him get the mask removed. He doesn't have a prayer to. The gun was never fired. In the way event transpired, I can finish him a simple laissez-faire.
Notice that Seymour kills Orrin through a combination of luck and inaction. Incidentally, the two best ways to enjoy the spoils of the American dream. And this luck and inaction allows Seymour to rationalize the death away. Point number 4 is in the song Supper Time, which is one of my favorite sequences in the show. Mr. Mushnick has discovered evidence of Orrin's dismemberment and tells Seymour that he's going to the police. After some encouragement from Audrey 2, Seymour tells Mushnick that he put the day's receipts inside the plant, which prompts Mushnick to walk within swallowing distance of Audrey 2, at which point he is promptly eaten. This death is much more active than the previous one. The plant is drawing Seymour further and further away from virtue. And on an emotional level, this death makes Seymour noticeably less likable as a character. Whether or not you think Orrin deserved to die, he was an abusive asshat, and we, the audience, don't feel super bad for him. Now, Mr. Mushnick, throughout the show, has mostly been fulfilling the stereotype of the greedy, money-grubbing Jew. But in this number, we get to see under the hood for the first time. When Mushnick discovers evidence that Seymour might be a murderer, he immediately and without question does the moral thing.
I didn't do it!
Then come down to the police station with me and tell them that, huh?
Okay, I mean, the moral thing insofar as the police are at all moral, which they're not. It's an easy shorthand for morality for the purpose of this narrative, and also it was the 80s and the mainstream conversation about the police was very different. Moving on. Previously, Mushnick seemed only to be concerned with Seymour insofar as he could make money off the relationship. But even though Seymour's arrest would absolutely affect Mushnick's bottom line, he's the one who knows how to feed the plant after all, that prospect isn't even mentioned here. Mushnick doesn't care about it anymore. And then, Seymour promptly punishes his adoptive father for his newfound morality, torpedoing his own newfound sense of belonging in the process. This is a potent demonstration of the theme, namely that the American dream is unsustainable and will eat itself. It's also a good example of how it's sometimes okay to play with harmful tropes, in this case the money-grubbing Jew, as long as you subvert them in an interesting and respectful way. Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, both Jews themselves, would almost certainly have been extremely cognizant of this. Lastly, point number 5 is in the very next number, The Meek Shall Inherit. Seymour is approached by multiple prominent showbiz personalities who offer him all kinds of exciting opportunities. A TV show, a photo on the cover of Time magazine, and a lecturing tour. While considering whether to accept, Seymour has an important soliloquy that, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to quote in its entirety. And by quote, I do, of course, mean sing! My future's starting. I've got to let it. Stick with that plant and gee, my bank account will thrive. What am I saying? No way, forget it. It's much too dangerous to keep that plant alive. I take these offers, that means more killing. Who knew success would come with messy, nasty strings? I sign these contracts, that means I'm willing to keep on doing bloody, awful, evil things. No, there's only so far you can bend. No, this nightmare must come to an end. No, you've got no alternative, Seymour, old boy, though it means you'll be broke again and unemployed. It's the only solution, it can't be avoided. The vegetable must be destroyed. But then there's Audrey. Lovely Audrey,
If life were tawdry and impoverished as before, she might not like me, she might not want me. Without my plant, she might not love me anymore.
This segment of song is perhaps the most important in the entire show. Every theme is distilled down to its essence. Seymour wants money, fame, and to be loved. He is entirely convinced that without these things, he is worthless. And so he's willing to do anything to achieve them, no matter how much it disgusts him. Now, every single one of these key moments, with the exception of Feed Me, in the film adaptation, they are all either condensed beyond recognition or cut completely. There is no adoption subplot with Mushnik. It's just the gas is cut and Oren's death is shortened a great deal, which reduces the impact of Seymour's hesitation. The meek shall inherit is condensed to a montage, and Seymour's crucial soliloquy, while it is still on the film's soundtrack, was cut in the final product. But the one scene that gets done dirtiest by the film adaptation has got to be Supper Time. Instead of piecing together what happened from the clues, Mushnik straight up witnesses Seymour chopping Oren up, making his character seem lucky instead of smart, and taking away a bit of his agency. When he confronts Seymour, he threatens him with a gun instead of appealing to his conscience, making him seem more violent. And then, as soon as he's got Seymour dead to rights and they're almost out the door, Mushnik pulls a complete 180. He closes the door and proposes that Seymour skip town, but not before teaching Mushnik how to take care of the plant, because money.
But then, if you'd rather hang...
Now, Seymour still tricks Mushnik into walking within swallowing distance of the plant, but this time he does it while Mushnik is pointing a gun at and blackmailing him. Furthermore, the scenario that Mushnik proposes is not only deeply immoral, but openly miserly. You can practically see the dollar signs in Vincent Gardenia's eyes in this scene. So all of these changes, seemingly tiny on their own, have a colossal cumulative effect. In the stage show, this scene makes the audience completely reconsider their previous notions about Mr. Mushnik, and demonstrates Seymour's continued descent into evil. In the movie, Mushnik becomes essentially the same as Oren, a no-goodnik who you don't feel that bad for when he gets eaten. And Seymour is painted as a lot more passive, as demonstrated by the contrasting dialogue in the show and movie.
Okay, Seymour, let's go.
Aren't you gonna collect the day's receipts so you can deposit them in the morning?
Didn't you put them in the safe?
Nope.
Why not?
I forgot the combination.
What do I have to do?
Just feed it.
Just feed it what?
Minerals.
Yes?
Thursdays, you should give it water.
In one of these, Seymour, unprompted, is spinning an elaborate lie to get Mushnik near the plant. In the other, Seymour is lying hesitantly and vaguely while under duress. He even has a little "sir" right before the big chomp, as if he had second thoughts and was going to warn Mushnik. The end result is the same, but the choice in the movie makes Seymour come across as a lot nicer. Whether or not this was intentional or whether or not the audience consciously clocked this is not relevant. This is the effect of that change. So, even putting aside that the movie, instead of subverting the money-grubbing Jew stereotype, just leans into it so hard as to break it in half, putting that aside, even though it pisses me off beyond words, disregarding all of that, the removal of nearly all of these Faustian turning points means that in the movie, Seymour is quite simply no longer a Faust figure. Now, I'm not trying to say he's a decent guy. He killed 2 people because of his low self-esteem, which we've all been there. My point is he is presented as more consistently likable. Now, in my opinion, this makes the film less emotionally engrossing and less cohesive. But objectively, what it does is make the movie way less dark in tone than the stage musical. So, Mr. Oz, Frankie, Baby, sweetie, honey, pussycat, I regret to inform you that you haven't actually made a movie about Seymour Krelborn. You made a movie about this new fucking guy. And to be clear, I like this new fucking guy, he's very charming. But when you make a movie about this nice, pleasant guy and you end it with everybody dying, that simply does not feel like the ending you were working towards. The test audience's reaction was not a result of the format you were working with. Audiences watch movies where the main character dies all the fucking time, and movies where the world ends, that's practically an entire goddamn genre. We love that shit. But all of the teeny tiny adaptational changes you made along the way without regard to the themes of the original text, that is where things truly went wrong. Now, to be clear, I don't know why all of these specific changes were made, and more importantly, I don't know at what point in the movie-making process each one occurred. But judging from the fact that all of these changes minus the ending made it into the director's cut on the 2017 Blu-ray, I'm willing to bet most of them were implemented before shooting began, which makes me think that it was a studio mandate during the screenplay stage. I think some exec or whoever got a little nervous about how Faustian and unlikable Seymour was and asked you to tone him down, and that's what you ended up doing. You took a musical that uses the Faustian structure to show how the American dream not only eats itself, but lures poverty-stricken people into maintaining it through a false prosperity gospel, and you did the worst thing you could have done. You tried, or in all likelihood were forced, to make it as palatable to as wide an audience as possible. So in an ironic twist, the quick, happy suburban ending is kind of the more appropriate choice for the movie we ended up with. And to be clear, that movie is still a great fucking movie. It's a beautiful, nostalgic, macabre comedy with cracking good music and some truly jaw-dropping puppetry. And you know, it's certainly a goddamn travesty that the entire subtext has been lost, but oh, you know, that's making art under capitalism, baby!
I used to think you left a stench, but now I see that you're a mensch, so I'm proposing be my son. Mushnik and son sounds great. 3 words with the ring of fate.